The story begins at the height of the Cold War, when the United States and the Soviet Union were racing to claim every inch of technological ground. The jet age was exploding. Speeds were rising. Altitudes were climbing. And inside military laboratories, engineers were being asked a single question. How do you build something no enemy can predict, intercept, or understand? That question led to one of the strangest projects of the 1950s, a flying machine that did not look human-made. A craft shaped like a perfect disc, with no wings, no tail, and no familiar features. This was Project 1794, the Air Force's attempt to build the world's first supersonic flying saucer. The idea didn't come from science fiction. It came from a Canadian company, Avro Aircraft, known for its experimental thinking. Avro had already developed bold jet concepts, so when their engineers proposed a circular craft that could hover like a helicopter, take off vertically, then accelerate to extreme speed, the United States listened. At that time, flexibility meant military power. An aircraft that didn't need a runway, couldn't be tracked by traditional radar, and could maneuver in any direction sounded like a tactical dream. The Air Force funded the project quietly. Official documents listed it only as Weapon System 606A. Only insiders used the name Project 1794. Work began in 1955, and Avro's lead engineer, John Frost, believed the design could reach the edge of space. The circular shape wasn't a gimmick. It was a technical solution. By forcing air through a ring around the disk, the craft could create a stable cushion for hovering. Tilt that air cushion, and the disk could move in any direction instantly. Add jet thrust, and it could climb to incredible heights. In theory, the aircraft would take off vertically, rise above enemy defenses, tilt forward, and accelerate to more than Mach 3. At that speed, interception would be nearly impossible. The saucer could cross borders before radar operators even realized something was there. The Air Force wanted speed, altitude, and unpredictability. A flying disc promised all three. Old black and white photos from the research period show engineers studying wind tunnel models shaped like metallic dinner plates, technicians wearing heavy gloves as they adjusted test rigs, and officers watching quietly from the background. These images feel strange today, almost unreal, because they show how seriously the U.S. took the idea of a real flying saucer. The core technology was called the turbo rotor. Imagine a giant spinning wheel placed at the center of the disk. Air entered from the top, passed into the rotor, accelerated, and exited through the rim. That rim created the lift. The entire aircraft depended on the stability of that spinning airflow. If it worked, the disk could hover steadily like a helicopter. If it failed, the entire craft would wobble uncontrollably. The first prototypes were small test beds used to study airflow. Engineers captured footage of them vibrating violently on stands, shaking like unstable plates on a table. The concept worked, but only at low altitudes and low speeds. The moment engineers pushed it harder, problems appeared everywhere. Still, the Air Force escalated the project. They wanted a full-size manned prototype. The craft became known as the Avrocar. It looked like a metallic saucer 8 meters wide, with a cockpit window at the front. It sat low to the ground on landing gear, with exhaust vents forming a ring around the body. Old photographs show it parked inside hangars under harsh overhead lights, surrounded by tools, cables, and nervous engineers. The Avrocar's first hover tests took place in 1959. The craft lifted off the ground, barely. It rose only a few feet before becoming unstable. Pilots described the sensation as standing on a ball that refused to stay still. The slightest movement caused the saucer to tilt or slide sideways. Control was nearly impossible. The engineers tried to fix the problem by adjusting the airflow, modifying the vents, and changing the rotor speeds. Nothing worked. The disk shape created an aerodynamic issue they could not solve, a phenomenon known as hubcapping. The saucer oscillated in random directions, shaking so violently that pilots feared it would flip. Even worse, the aircraft could not climb higher than a few feet. The air cushion that gave it lift disappeared once the craft tried to rise beyond ground effect. Without that cushion, the rotor couldn't generate enough thrust to keep it airborne. The Air Force had been promised a machine that could reach the edge of space. Instead, they got a hovering platform that couldn't safely rise above a soldier's chest. Internal memos from the era reveal frustration. Engineers admitted the design had aerodynamic limitations, beyond what 1950s technology could overcome. The weight of the engines, the inefficiency of the lift system, and the stability problems were all far more serious than expected. But the Air Force didn't give up immediately. They still hoped the disc shape might be useful for reconnaissance. They funded further modifications. They asked for new tests. They even proposed new missions for the craft: battlefield observation, troop transport, and emergency extraction. Meanwhile, old photos show pilots sitting inside the cockpit, clutching unstable controls, while technicians stood behind them taking notes. The saucer lifted, wobbled, drifted, and landed again. Every test ended the same way. The aircraft was unmanageable. The dream drained away slowly. By the early 1960s, the Air Force, NASA, and even the Army had lost interest. Jet aircraft were advancing quickly. Rockets were improving. Helicopters were becoming reliable. In comparison, a disc-shaped craft with uncontrollable stability issues was not worth further funding. When the project was canceled, it didn't fade into public knowledge. It was buried. The Air Force classified much of the research, sealing away reports, design notes, and test footage. Anyone outside the program had no idea the United States had attempted to build a real flying saucer. For decades, rumors floated around. People saw blurry photos. Some workers whispered about disc-shaped aircraft hidden in hangars. UFO stories grew, but no one knew the truth. Everything remained secret until declassified documents were released in the early 21st century. These documents revealed not just the technical details, but also the enormous ambition behind the project. The reveal was shocking. The United States hadn't just studied a flying saucer, they had built one, tested one, and nearly tried to weaponize it. What remains today are grainy photographs, shaky test footage, and frustrated engineering notes. The saucer never flew high, never reached supersonic speeds, and never approached space. It stayed trapped near the ground, shaking and drifting like a machine fighting its own design. But its existence proves something important about the 1950s. It was an era of extreme imagination. Engineers believed anything was possible. Governments funded ideas that looked insane by today's standards. And the line between science fiction and military research was thinner than anyone realized. Project 1794 failed in every measurable way. It never became operational. It never reached its goals. But its failure taught engineers valuable lessons about lift, stability, and airflow that influenced later designs. Even NASA studied the aerodynamic data from the saucer years after the project died. The aircraft itself now sits in museums and archives as a reminder of an era when ambition outran science. Its stainless steel skin is scratched. Its rotor is frozen. Its cockpit is empty. But every part of it tells the story of an engineering gamble taken in a moment when the world was changing fast. If it had succeeded, military aviation would look nothing like it does today. Jet fighters might be circular. Runways might be obsolete. Vertical takeoff could have become standard. But fate chose a different path. Instead, the flying saucer became a footnote in Cold War history, an experiment too bold for its time, too unstable to control, and too strange to survive. And yet the ambition behind it still echoes today in modern VTOL aircraft and experimental designs that continue to chase the same dream: unrestricted movement in the air. The forgotten saucer of 1956 wasn't a UFO. It wasn't alien. It wasn't a mystery. It was human. It was mechanical. And it was a reminder that the future isn't always shaped by success. Sometimes it's shaped by the projects that failed, the experiments that broke apart, and the dreams that never made it past the testing field. Project 1794 was one of those dreams. A disc-shaped machine born in secrecy, built with confidence, flown with hope, and buried in silence. And today, as we look back at the grainy photos from its brief life, we see not a strange aircraft, but a snapshot of the world's boldest era of invention.